On this week's program, Night Danger comes dangerously close to making a point. Forgotten World Games forgot to know what he was talking about before opening his mouth. J. Scott Garibay talks about burning books, then completely misses the point about Delta Green. And the Clown Prince of Q-Tips has completely lost it. Welcome, Internet, to Driving and Dragons, and the weekly dive into the most questionable takes in TTRPGs for the week. In channel news this week, we will feature a video about things you need to think about if you plan on designing your own TTRPG, including several things that the big boys over at WotC abandoned along the way and are suffering from. The slow, steady progress on getting the Dodge Dart down here continues as we wait on the state to process the title paperwork to ensure it transfers clean and legally, first to the channel and then to whomever wins it in the end. Remember, folks, any revenue this channel generates will go towards that project, and paid members of the channel and or my Patreon, linked in the video description, will get to vote on the various phases of that project to determine everything from how it drives to how it looks. Paid members will also be automatically entered into the drawing to win the car once it's finished, while free entry will require a snail mail form. The 280ZX project, my personal car, has been stalled recently, but I should be back on camera with that project in the coming weeks. Long and short is that chasing down a bad ground is both time-consuming and extraordinarily boring and uneventful to watch. So I want that out of the way before I go back to filming. And I thought I had a pair of good fenders on lot, but they turned out to be in worse condition than advertised. As always, like the video, share it with your friends, smash the subscribe button, and ring the bell. Because, ding, 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 it's time to step in the ring and lay out a few folks who used intelligence as a dump stat this week. Opening up with the mildly stupid, we go to good old Night Danger over on X. First off, some credit where credit is due. Night Danger did post his gumbo recipe and some images, and the man does it right. Holy trinity of celery, onion, and bell pepper. Browns his roux nice and dark when using chicken and sausage. It should be slightly lighter with seafood gumbo. Uses dark meat on the bone and butter, though EVU is acceptable. Simmers it for hours. All the basics. But dude, kielbasa, or kielbasa, depending on which pronunciation you want to use, no, sir. Come on, man. Get that andouille out and don't let yourself suffer inferior Russian sausage. All right, praise out of the way. It's time to point out stupid. Night Danger didn't miss too badly here, and some grace can be given for making surface-level points in the limited characters that are allowed in an X reply, but given my recent content, it bears calling out. Harmony Ginger had posted that she finds players misunderstand neutral alignments entirely, and that neutral is not a disregard for lives of others, and that is still evil even if active harm isn't done. There's some nuance there that Harmony is missing, but her point's largely correct. Night Danger's response was to say, quote, self-sacrifice is good law, ignorance is neutrality, self-interest is evil/chaos, any other interpretation is intellectually taxing to perform, unquote. Well, it may be taxing if your IQ equates to an intelligence score that's more than a standard racial modifier away from double digits. To start with, this reply equates law and good and chaos with evil, which is fundamentally flawed and a big part of why the original alignment system was expanded. These are not the same. To be broad about it, good and evil involve the results and intended results of actions, and law and chaos involve how you go about achieving those results. But the biggest issue with this comment is ignorance is neutrality. This is just outright incorrect and fundamentally disrupts the actual alignment system. While ignorance can be a component, neutrality is not merely ignorance. If anything, it is a balanced approach either by design or through indifference. In fact, this statement would be vastly improved with that one word change, indifference is neutrality instead of ignorance is neutrality. Even that has its problems, but it's at least closer to correct. Setting aside the philosophical approach to neutrality, which is its own category, neutral alignments basically consist of either actively trying to balance a decision based on immediate factors or doing so by default through a lack of concern. I've used comments like, good is thinking for others or thinking of others, evil is thinking of yourself, as a primer for deeper discussions, but that generally isn't enough for anything other than a very gamist, adventuring style of play, and even there it's largely insufficient. Overall, even when giving some grace that some of this was done largely for the sake of brevity, this is definitely a poorly thought out comment that shows a fundamental misunderstanding of alignment. I suggest Mr. Danger hit that bell icon so he doesn't miss any of my videos on alignment, because he needs them. Moving forward, we have the good old Bro SR. This week, I'm actually on their side. Or rather, I should say that they left the dump stat side and joined me in the land of the thinking man. Wizard goes boom. Served up another hanging slider on X. And Forgotten World Games couldn't help but knock it out of the numbskull park to bounce across the parking lot while he rounded the bases of idiocy. Wizard posted a commentary on one-to-one timekeeping, basically stating that it appeared that it was not only used for downtime, but any time players were not in combat. It was designed to promote discussion, and it did just that. For the record, one-to-one timekeeping can be broken down like this. Between sessions, time runs one-to-one. In combat, the game operates in rounds, turns, etc. In session, but out of combat, time runs one-to-one, but can be and often is accelerated as needed for gameplay. For example, we may use one-to-one while playing out a conversation between a dragon and the party. If the players aren't quick on their feet with the replies and responses, the dragon may get impatient. The famous, you don't get infinite time to plot and plan out of character conundrum. While traveling 5 days across the desert, time is sped up to jump between points of interest. The 6 hours of walking is skipped over to get to the part where the sand people attack at dusk. Well, Forgotten Worlds proceeded to open his mouth with what he called an example of how one-to-one is stupid and won't work unless the entire campaign is built around it. What came out of his mouth instead was an example of how he has absolutely no idea how one-to-one time actually works. Can't call it ignorance, it is stupidity. These people have had it explained to them 1,000 times that time in session does not have to be kept strictly to one-to-one. If your character sits down to play blackjack for 6 hours, he doesn't pack up his stuff and leave because his character will be doing that the entire session. That 6 hours can be handled in a little time, however little time it takes to make a roll and determine if he broke even, hit it big, or lost his ass at the table. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of one-to-one timekeeping, and it basically invalidates everything the opponents of the Bro SR have to say on the subject. If you can't even accurately explain the mechanic, how can any of your conclusions about it be trusted? Were there some things Forgotten World said in the ensuing Bro SR pile-on that were absolutely correct and good points? Definitely. But because he built everything on a muddy sand foundation of proving that he doesn't even understand the basics of one-to-one time, every time he was right was simply a blind squirrel finding a nut. And speaking of nuts, J. Scott Garibay has further cemented his hold on the title of least sane 5e D&D fanboy on YouTube this week. This time, the loon informed us that nobody actually likes games like Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu, and that it is only the overwhelming charisma of game masters that leads these games to existing. That's right, folks. The mental giant that is Garibay is here to tell you that no one would ever want to play out a horror investigation scenario in which they assume the role of an everyman up against deadly supernatural odds. No one wants to be restricted to a normal human being with only his wits and his trusty 38 detective special. You only play these games, which old Scotty says should never have existed because a dungeon master is a font of personality and social acumen, so great that people play the games just to be around them. That makes tons of sense because ask any experienced game master, the stereotype is absolutely true. As game masters, we were all homecoming kings, swimming in lascivious offers from the fairer sex and invited to all the best parties because everyone was simply dying to be in our presence. Garibay has said some incredibly stupid things in the past, but this may be the single least intelligent thing to come out of his mouth. 2 videos about how the only game players actually have fun playing is Dungeons & Dragons as produced by Wizards of the Coast. And the only reason they even show up into other games is to bask in the incredible light of the Dungeon Master's social presence. So DMs, don't abuse your incredible powers by forcing your players to roll normie characters and play games other than D&D. Also, apparently encouraging people to unsubscribe from D&D Beyond and to delete their PDFs is the equivalent of mass burning of books. The sheer magnitude of this lack of intelligence, just based on that, I'm pretty certain that if actual information entered into Garibay's head, it would explosively decompress from the loss of vacuum force between his ears. Now we come to it, the place I never wish to return. The online TTRPG personality that I have said needs to be locked away and forgotten for the good of the hobby. The negative force of nature that is Condor DM. Clown Door. The chess pigeon himself. This imbecile has entered into a full-blown psychotic meltdown. Do not go view his nonsense for yourself. I'm not saying this out of malice towards him, nor is my goal my typical ignore Condor goal of making him go away. This time it's for his own sake, because this dude should absolutely not be encouraged, directly or indirectly, to continue the path he's on. Condor is taken to walking around a sad, dirty room while smoking cheap cigarettes and ranting at YouTube like he's cussing at the prison guards through a security camera. As is his modus operandi, he rants about things he has virtually no understanding of and is largely incorrect about. For instance, he once again went off on the bro OSR, as he calls them, because he's too stupid to grasp the concept that it's bro SR, not bro OSR. He calls them an offshoot of the OSR, an acronym that he doesn't know the meaning of. Why is he so angry? Well, because they trash him and talk shit about him and are a bunch of nerds who think going to the gym makes them cool, but they're losers who can't get girls and they play bullshit rules no one plays, no one likes, and they have no influence. Well, most of them are married, especially the ones who are vocal online, and their playstyle is very much on the rise, as evidenced by Shadow Dark embracing some elements of it, and major YouTube influencers like DM Layer starting to cover their style in videos. So, of course, Clown Door is wrong there. They aren't an offshoot of the OSR. If anything, their name is a mockery of the OSR. OSR is old school Renaissance or old school revival, depending on who you ask. It's a movement about making new versions of the older editions of D&D. It's about making games that are not OD&D or AD&D 1E, but are largely based on them. The Bro SR is explicitly about not changing AD&D. It is about playing the old versions with dogmatic adherence to the rules as written. If anything, it's diametrically opposed to updated revival versions of the game. That's part of what makes the Shadow Dark push of the mechanics they love so funny. It is the OSR removing the rules the Bro SR likes from AD&D and moving them to the games that are, at least on the surface, antithetical to Bro SR philosophy. But this, of course, is completely lost on Bird Brain, who can't even get the name right, let alone anything else. His vitriol is also misplaced, because he claims the Bro SR attacks him and comes after him, and I can't tell you the last time that I saw a bro even mention him in an offhand manner. Part of Condor's problem is that since he can't be bothered to do even the tiniest bit of research into anything he talks about, he just assumes everyone is Bro SR. They are at the same time loser nerds with no friends or influence, and everyone in the TTRPG social media sphere at the same time. And I mean everyone. I've never seen someone so universally detested by the entirety of a group than Condor. That black guy who became a Klan member as part of an FBI sting has more supporters in the KKK than Condor has in the TTRPG online space. In addition to the Bro SR, Condor also took time to attack people for not buying his objectively garbage, unplayable game on DriveThruRPG. You see, you have no right to be picky and choose OSR games over his slop. You have no right to purchase only playable games with talent and effort put into their creation. You don't have the right to criticize his game. You don't have the right to dismiss games for being terrible. And TTRPGs are dead because of fringe nerds, personal agendas, and deceit. But guess what? Condor actually did get one thing right. That's right. Stop the presses. Sun has shined on the dog's ass. The blind squirrel has found a nut, and the clock chimed 12 on the broken clock. Condor pointed out that Griff Morgan and the Fellowship of the Thing have absolutely no business sense at all for basically shitting on their only potential customer base. They go to war with the Bro SR and threaten Harmony Ginger and Arcane Library with frivolous legal action over Bronstein because they want to grift license fees out of the only people who may have bought their products. As Condor said, quote, the Bronstein guys, what is their decision? Well, we're nerds. We care about the details. And we'll go fucking with the only customers we have. We'll lose a ton of money in the process and not get rewarded for our work. We seem to be appreciated by this group of people, but we're going to make false accusations and tear it down before realizing that that was our only fucking customer base, unquote. Bravo, Condor, you finally got one right. That said, seriously, if I worry that J. Scott Garibay will break down in tears and drive his car off of a bridge one day over D&D, I think anyone who ever speaks about TTRPGs online needs to be very leery of any unexpected packages showing up from Canada. Because Condor is the other kind of unhinged. The kind you see on Chopper Cam in a porta-john surrounded by federal agents one day because he mailed something untoward towards somebody who didn't like his game. The only saving grace is that he's such an idiot and so narcissistic that the box would be clearly labeled, open this and get what you deserve for talking shit about me, Condor DM on X. That's all I got for this week, folks. Check back later for the video that I mentioned before on what you should consider before publishing your own game, and check out our next video on alignment and TTRPGs.